And now it is my great pleasure to welcome Ruth, who's going to lead the rest of the session with you today. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Lindsay. Hi, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. It's lovely to see some of you again. And if I haven't seen you for a while, it's lovely to see you. And if I've not met you before, hello. So just for those of you who haven't met before, I'm Ruth. I'm the Director of Development at People Dancing, and I lead the organisation's communication and fundraising efforts, amongst other things. And that's why I've been asked to lead this session today. I just wanted to say a couple of things, as Lindsay's already mentioned, about kind of communication, being clear with each other. If you've got a question, you're burning to ask it. If you can use the raise hand function, it just makes it easier for me because I can see that quite clearly in my sort of peripheral vision. You can use the chat function if it's a question you think, I want to ask that question, but I don't want to interrupt anyone's flow, and we can always come back to it at the end. And hopefully there'll be just enough time at the end to make some space for you to ask specific questions, if that's okay with everybody. So I'm just going to share my screen with you so we can begin. I'm going to use PowerPoint. Let me start sharing. Hey, from the start. Can I just get a quick thumbs up to make sure everyone can see the PowerPoint? Awesome. Brilliant. Let me just move my screen to there and I can see everybody's faces as I'm talking. So today's webinar, it's all about how to think about and develop communications that can support your income generation. Oh, that button doesn't work. That one does. Okay. So what we're going to cover this afternoon, the aim of the session is to help you to generate ideas for attracting funds through these three things: understanding the importance of communications and marketing, identifying and utilising networks, and planning. So ahead of today, I think Lindsay may have shared an article with you. You may not have had time to read it, and that's absolutely fine. It's my way of kind of setting the scene for kind of the thinking this afternoon, which is all about storytelling and narrative around communications and raising money. And Michelle Wright, who is the Director of Arts, Fundraising and Philanthropy, wrote an article for Arts Professional a couple of years ago now, I think it was. But in that article, she talks about the notion of storytelling and knowing your audience and getting the pitch right, and how you need to kind of go about that in a methodical way. And what I really liked about what Michelle had to say was that it doesn't matter really if it's a story you're trying to tell in a broader communication about your work, or it's a targeted piece of marketing. The same tools apply. So just a few quotes there for you. Great storytelling is about connecting emotionally with audiences and donors in a clear and succinct way. To really engage organisations, you need to consider telling stories about how the organisation is currently helping specific individuals. So that's being about targeted facts, individuals and communities that the audience can recognise and relate to. And actually, I think I would add to that also using the right channels, the right platforms for the communication as well is really crucial there. It's the details that make a story real, and for storytelling to be effective, organisations need to invest time internally in developing some of the individual emotional stories. So it's evidencing your work, but also making it something interesting for people to either read about and engage with, or want to decide to get more involved in the work that you're doing by either funding it or becoming a participant. And then I'll just leave with the final speech bubble, which was a quote from a guy called Chris Descent at the Agency for Creative Concern, and he summarises the art of storytelling into this idea that it's head, heart and hand, which I really like. And he says, what you need to test your thinking around is, does the story make the reader interested to know more? Does it make them care about the cause? And the most important one, will it stimulate them to take action? And again, for me, that's not just about fundraising in a traditional sense, that's also about whether someone's going to become a new participant in your class or your activity, or a new partner in your work. If a story can achieve all three, we have a fighting chance to make a compelling case to audiences and donors alike. So that's setting the scene from the professionals. What I'd quite like to do now, if that's okay with you, just as a way of communicating with each other and finding out a bit more about you and your needs this afternoon, Lindsay's just going to put you into a couple of breakout rooms. I'd like you in your breakout rooms to introduce yourselves. Now, some of you will have been in these breakout rooms with each other on many occasions over the last couple of months, so it'll be like a little reunion for you, which is great. Just say hi, who you are, why you're here, and what you would really like to get out of this afternoon, or what is your biggest issue at the moment. And if you could focus that around your issues around communications and marketing, that would be very helpful. And we're going to do 15 minutes, Lindsay, is that right? Yeah. And then I'll ask you to come back in. Lindsay will invite you back in. And then if you could nominate one person in your group just to do the feedback on behalf, and then I will make some notes. So I think you'll probably all disappear now, magically, into some rooms as Lindsay waves her magic wand. See you shortly. So, how many groups do we have, Lindsay?
Sorry, I was muted. 1, 2, 3, 4 in the end, I think.
Awesome. Okie dokie then. So, can you all see my lovely sheet of white blank paper? Yes, awesome. So I'm just going to make some notes on here. Who's going to go first? Who'd like to go first? Let's have a look. Oh. Joe Cohn, you've got a thumbs up there. Does that mean you're going to go first? Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah,
so
I don't mind. So our group, we're all in different areas of the country, and lots of different things. So for some people, as they're freelance and they are sometimes working for other organisations, they felt that this was the time where they'd like to find out some of the skills and some of the things and get more confidence with it in a new kind of, marketing and stuff. And because obviously the companies they would work for would normally do all that. So it's like an upskilling time. We spoke about looking at how we can target our local community, and we were interested in wanting to find how we kind of find our space locally, because obviously online is really active at the minute. So it's how we kind of break through that and connect to our local network and our local area. We were saying also that there's hurdles of some of our participants who are incredibly vulnerable. So one person was talking about older adults with dementia, and that actual delivery online is not necessarily appropriate. But how do you connect, in some ways, old school methods, so not social media kind of marketing and communicating, so looking at old school methods, and how we articulate our unique participation, like what we do, our unique selling point. You've got a lot going on in exercise and you've got a lot of high art, but we're kind of in that middle ground, and it's about communicating our values. and also looking at how we use this time to look ahead positively and look at forward planning. So for some of us, our circumstances were that, you know, this is not about the immediate, like getting online and getting participants to attend that. Some of this is about looking at how we use this long term and support our forward planning. And for me in particular, as I'm a chatter, it's about how I be concise with clear methods.
Yeah.
And which methods are appropriate for what we're trying to message out there.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thanks, Joe. I'm just going to put that up there, actually. Who would like to go next? Do I have any raised hands? Oh, Laura, hurrah. Hello, Laura.
Hello, how are you doing?
Oh,
I'm not sure that I've quite gathered together this, so I'm just going to think about roughly what everyone was saying. I think everyone in the group was involved in teaching in the community, in their communities in some way, and there's sort of a variety of youth and family and older people work, and also accessible dance. And I think everyone has sort of feels like they're in the early stages of either trialing out online classes or is already has already set something up with their groups, but in early stages of kind of growing that or regrowing that from groups that they've been working with. But we're looking to sort of expand what they've started to do or what they're currently doing, or to kind of shift. So for one person, they've fairly recently moved to a different area, and so have been focusing gradually on developing their practice in a new place, having had sort of 9 years experience working, say, with Canduco. And so it's like in this time now, how to set something up, and to expand what's available in terms of accessible dance classes. A couple of us also are working with older people, and that's something that I was saying, I've sort of had a little pocket of money from our funding that that was towards developing new classes. So one was going to be a Parkinson's class, which we'd trained in, myself and my colleague. And so it's sort of what we can offer. I feel like I've put everything on hold, and from where we'd built up to regular care home activity, you know, classes in care homes, what we can offer now, really, for those, again, people with dementia, how to set up something for Parkinson's now in this time, how to support our older people who are not so interested in doing things on the internet, or maybe don't have access. So aside from that, then there was also a little bit, so it's about how to put together marketing resources to develop what we're doing or to get it out there. And also this little bit of like feeling the saturation of there's so many amazing opportunities out there. And the classes are global, with big companies offering things. How do we place ourselves within that if we feel small somehow, or less experienced somehow? Or how do we consider more and strategically work out who we know and what our network is, and how we can sort of really tap into that? So the last thing we were saying was, actually, yeah, if you don't ask, you don't get. And there are organisations out there that might share what we're doing, and help to boost that in this time. And yeah,
Brilliant.
we utilise that.
That's great. I'm trying to create, listening to you, what I think are questions. I have to say, I have to just, I don't think I'm in the best place to talk about developing practice to meet the needs of participants. I think I would say that if you haven't been engaged in any of the webinars that our practice specific teachers have been doing, it would be worth going in and having a listen into some of those that have been recorded. So I know that Diane's has been talking about adapting, and that's gone live today, I think, Diana Amon's practice sharing network, and that would, I think they're obviously specifically talking about working with older adults, and no doubt Diana's got some words of wisdom to offer you there. So I'm not going to attempt to answer that one this afternoon, if that's okay. Who's next? Who is going next? Do I have any more hands raised? Who've got anyone? John's waving furiously at me. Hello, John. It's our partners in the north. Hey up, John.
Hello.
Hello. Oh.
So our group was really interesting because actually we're all different and we're all coming at it, but actually, in summary, I would want to do all of these things. So there was thinking about just taking this opportunity and moment to scale ourselves up and learn how basically others are doing it, and take what bits of practice we want from the good practice that's out there. Then it was also thinking about when we're talking about marketing or using social networks, we tend to fall into kind of old school about Facebook and Twitter. And this was really about engaging young people. So how can we use that? How can we use new technology or new social media streams like TikTok to engage young people into our practice? And then we also had about that relocating. How can you tell your story? How can you get people on board? Knowing that you've got a bank of history and good examples, so you can basically tell it to people who know nothing about you. And then for me, it was about you've done your project or you've got something that you really want to shout out about it. But social media is about hearing many things, you know, hearing the same message often. So it's about how can you take that story and basically reskin it in as many ways that you can with as little effort as you need to.
My typing's not great. Brilliant. Okie dokie. Thank you, John. And we've got one more group. Looking for waving, and it's Tina. How marvellous. Hi, Tina. I'll mute you. Can you unmute yourself? Well,
yep.
Excellent, Tina.
Okay. There was only 2 in our group, but that's okay. I can still feedback. So we talked about kind of who to talk to in the first place. So knowing, so getting hold of the people who you need to be talking to, first of all, and then also about how to talk to them, what the best methods are to talk to those people. We talked about, like other people, about having companies do it for you, so kind of buying into franchises, and the cost of that, and maybe the lack of creativity because you have to use somebody else's music resources, that kind of thing. But how sometimes they can be really good examples of telling a story, knowing who their audience are, and obviously that costs you, but they've obviously researched into that and they know exactly who they're targeting, and that's why maybe they are so successful. So we talked about that, and also it being a part of a brand, so that you know what you're buying into, because it is a big brand. And we did talk about the amount of competition, so that now that there is so much going on, and that people can access famous choreographers, whoever they need to have free sometimes dance lessons, which I know that I'm opting into because I'm getting some great CPD from that. But we also talked about people being very loyal, and I am finding that my community classes that were working, they are sticking with me, and they're being really loyal, and also are really grateful for me continuing with these classes, because actually some of them, I'm the only person that they're seeing in that day, so they're very grateful for that and being very loyal to me. We also talked about being concise. I know that I love teaching early years, and I'd really like to develop something with early years and families, but I also love teaching in residential homes, and I have lots of ideas and want to do everything, and it's whether I go with one idea and try and develop that and then move on, because I feel like sometimes I've got too many things going on. So it's kind of being perhaps, well, I think it's what Joe said about bringing it down and being concise about what you want to do and clear. And then I think the positives really for it is that I do feel like I'm having lots of opportunity for CPD, both practically and also the theory and the business side being offered, and making great connections. And I do quite often look at the website for people dancing, but I haven't really accessed before. And I do feel like now that I know that you're all very quite far away from me, but I do feel like a real good connection with people. So that's a real positive, I think, for me as well. And that was it really, I think. Yeah. That's
brilliant. Thank you so much.
I'm just going to cut in as well, because I think there was actually one more group who needed to speak.
Ooh.
I said 4, but there were 5. I'm sorry, that's my bad.
So who's the remaining group?
It was Emma and Lucilla's group, I think.
And who is going to speak? Emma and Lucilla. Who's anybody waving? Nobody waving up? Lucilla has raised a hand. Oh, hello, Lucilla.
Oh no, maybe it was me who just started talking.
Well, that's really lucky because I can be so quick because everyone's covered so much of what we said. But the one thing I would pick up on is what Tina and Joe have mentioned was about being concise. And we said that dance artist is quite a sort of a nebulous concept, and there are no sort of strong lines really. It's a bit blurry, so we felt we needed to find the right words to say. This is along storylines, storytelling, and find the right words to say who we are and what we are teaching, and be specific and clear about our stories. So yes, language to tell your story to different audiences. And we also said it's something that we weren't clear in our own head about what we did, and found it difficult to articulate that verbally to other people who might not be conversant with dance language, sort of thing. Oh my God, that's my doorbell. I've got to get into a parcel, so hang on. I'll be back in a second.
Thanks, Lucilla.
Yay, I'm back in a minute.
So, whilst Lucilla has gone to get her Amazon parcel, probably, that's a really good list. What I'm about to take you through then are some kind of basic stuff that will hopefully give you a sense of the things that you need to take care of in order to start to do some of this. So I really do appreciate, as someone who is responsible at People Dancing for communicating about the organisation's work, how difficult that can be, and how difficult that can be when you're looking out towards a broad range of audiences. And I think one of the important important things to do is just to be really focused and clear about what you're doing. And actually, I think it's really interesting, what you'll hopefully walk away with this afternoon is that you don't actually need to be marketing and communication specialists. Because if you've got a few tools at your fingertips and you know how to use them and use them effectively, you can do these things for yourself. And I remind myself at the end of the presentation to tell you about some resources and a toolkit that we're working on at the moment, which will do some of that work for you. So I'm going to now try and share the rest of my presentation. Let me just make sure we've saved these lovely notes. Where we go. And that's not there. Bear with me 2 seconds. Share screen. There he is. So, here we go. So, what I thought would be really useful to do, because we're talking about things that are not everyday things for people teaching and leading dance. It's either, as some of you described, something that someone else does in the organisation for you, or it's something that's might feel that it's something you did in the past and you're not quite sure about how to use it, or it's something that's completely frightening or alienating to you. So for me, it's just useful just to check in on by what I mean around marketing, communications, networks, stroke audiences. And also just to say, there is no one size fits all. There's no magic communication and marketing tool thing. It is a bit like a toolbox. You open it up, there's a load of things in it, and you work out what the job it is that you need the toolbox to do. So it's either, you know, hammering a nail into the wall or tightening up the screw on your piece of IKEA furniture. So you know whether you need hammer, Allen key, or if it's a bit more sophisticated, you might need some kind of mechanized drill. Whatever your job is that needs doing, you are going to get the right things out of the toolkit to do the job. So just because someone else is doing that over there and that looks good, doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the right thing for you. It is important to look at what they're doing, because there might be some things that you think, actually, I like what they're doing and it seems to be working, and understand what it is they're doing and why it's working is perhaps more important than anything else. So some clarification then. I apologise if this is like really basic, but I think it's really important that we define, when I'm talking about marketing, I'm really talking about this thing over here. I'm really talking about direct communication with someone about trying to sell a thing. So the leaflet, the poster, the post, whatever it is that says, here's my class, come along, join in. And then in a more broader context, when I'm talking about communications, I might be talking about something that's not quite about a direct sell or a direct instruction or call to action. It might be messaging. It might be that thing that people have talked about, that kind of building your following, building your brand. So for example, it's a screenshot here of our People Dancing Facebook page. Those of you that follow us on social media will see that we use Facebook all of the time to promote our own activity, to promote the activity to members, send key messages to members. But we also post and repost things that we think reinforces our values or our brand. So in this instance, there's a screenshot there of a film that we thought was really worth sharing with everybody. So you'll see stuff on our social media platforms that we think, as I said, reinforces our brand and has a stronger message about who we are as an organisation. And those things are really important to consider when you're perhaps talking about engaging in new audiences and partners. So some of you talked about perhaps moving into a new area, literally, geographically, or you might be trying to move into a new area of work, i.e. of trying to break into a kind of health and well-being environment with your work. You can start to tell the story of you and what you're doing, not just by a kind of direct piece of marketing, but also beginning to build a picture around who you are and what you do. And I know that some of you also said that you're quite interested to know how to reach younger audiences. So I can tell you, organisationally at People Dancing, we made a decision about 18 months ago that we wanted to build our younger audiences. So we had a fairly inactive Instagram account, and we had, by some reason, managed to accumulate about 900 followers. We absolutely don't know how we got them, but when we realised there were 900 people in the world following us, and they were all in the age group that we were trying to reach, we decided that that was something that we needed to develop and build upon. So we did some work behind the scenes, looking at what kind of messages, how younger people want to see information. And some of the work that we did was very simple. It was about timing of posts, the kind of images we were using, and being quite sort of tight with language, not lots and lots of language. And the other thing that we did actually as an organisation was we worked out who our audience was across those 3 key social media platforms. So in a very broad brush way, our Facebook audience tends to be, and you can find all of this out if you go into the insight part of any of your Facebook or Instagram or Twitter accounts. You can look in the back end and see who's following you, what age they are, where they exist in the world, if they're male, if they're female. There's all sorts of demographic information that you can find out, which allows you then to be a bit more targeted with your posts. So we found out really briefly that our Facebook audience is mostly female. It's mostly people aged 35 and upwards, and mostly practitioners. Our Instagram account tends to have a much younger profile, tends to be people between the ages of 18 and 30. Majority of them are actually either younger people in full-time education or graduated from full-time education. And actually there's quite a big following on our Instagram account from HEI, higher education institutions, generally speaking. And actually that's been quite deliberate on our part to do that as well, because I'll be completely honest with you, they are our future audience, they are our future members. So by targeting a person in their first year as an undergraduate on a course, we start to engage with them in a way where they don't need our services quite yet, but they're building up a relationship with us. Hopefully, when they do become employed or they start working as a freelancer, they would come to People Dancing for their support, for their professional support. And then very briefly, Twitter tends to be organisation to organisation, so that kind of business to business. So we tend not to promote stuff that's very sort of specific to independents and individuals on our Twitter accounts. So the value of a good marketing and communication plan to raise income from your work. And for me, this is all about planning. It allows you to do some very clear things. And I think that goes back to some of the questions you had at the beginning, or the burning issues. We don't have a lot of time. So you need to make sure that the work that you are doing is focused and targeted. And I've put down there as my 4th bullet point, not doing what I would call a scattergun approach. So if you've got a specific piece of work that's targeted at a demographic or an age group, that you really clearly research the communication and the marketing that you're going to do for that particular audience. So there's not a sort of, I'm going to cover all of the bases. I'm going to do a social media campaign on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm going to get posters printed. I'm going to get leaflets printed. I'm going to do an article in the local paper. It might be that all of those things is a complete waste of your time and energy and resources, when one of them done really, really well will bring about the same or bring about the ideal goal. A good plan will also help you be very clear about your messages. So I know some of you have talked about language and making it appropriate for the people that you're trying to communicate with. And also, it will allow you to track your progress and impact. And I think that's really crucial to knowing that you've succeeded in some way. So if you've spent a whole load of time and money on one particular piece of communication or marketing and nobody is engaging with you, you should have in your plan the opportunity to go in and have a look and work out why that's not happening. And actually, one of the things we've got now that we never had before, as I said, are all these analytical things that sit behind our digital communication platforms, that you're able to go in and find out stuff. Literally, how many people looked at your Facebook page and at what time of the day they were looking. And it could be that you've just posted something at the wrong time of day. And it's really important, I think you'll all agree, that when you've put in a whole lot of work and you've really bought into something, you're really passionate about it, that you begin to see the payoff for your efforts. So I'm going to suggest, as it's 3 o'clock, that we have a cup of tea. I'm not going to make it. You're going to have to make your own. I would love to make a round of tea for you all and get the biscuits out, because that would be super on a lovely sunny afternoon. We could just go and sit in the garden, have a good old chat. But an hour sitting in front of a computer is a very long time. So I'm going to recommend we take 5 minutes to do all the things that we need to do: walk, drink water, have a cup of tea, eat some biscuits, and go to the loo. And as creative people, I'm presuming we can do all of those things at the same time. So I'm going to say, see you back here at 3:05. Awesome. Of course, I didn't get a cup of tea. It's been an Amazon delivery. So you had to find out what you've ordered. Which is beginning to be like your real life, isn't it? And sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I get a bit bored and I buy things on Amazon and then I forget. My daughter's really good at doing that. It's parcels and parcels every day. Did we all get a cup of tea, glass of water? John looks like he's got some biscuits. He has. Is it cold up north, John, because you've got your cardi on again? It's a very nice cardi, I have to say. So, I just want to quickly say, to reassure you, that the presentation, I'm going to save it as a PDF and I'm going to get it uploaded alongside the recording of this session. So Rosie will do some magic, and next week it'll be on People Dancing website the same way as all the other stuff has been. There will be a number of other resources that I'm going to point you towards, and I will make sure that the links are in the same place. So you've not got to sort of dart around all over the place looking for the things that I'm talking about. So quickly then, I'm going to just spend the next half an hour just whizzing you through a bit more thinking and around writing a communications plan and things to think about that will help you with your either your fundraising applications, your marketing communications to new participants, or trying to open up some of those conversations with potential partners or people you want to engage in your work, other stakeholders. Is everybody back in the room, do we think? Everybody okay? Yeah, looks good. Right. Let's put the screen share back up. And start from current slide. Let's just make sure I've got the right one. Yes. So, there are some basic, they're the W's basically, when it comes to clear and simple communication and marketing planning. So for demonstration purposes, I came up with a simple idea, and I'm going to talk you now through what I would do in my communication process. And I want you to just remember, this can be about communicating to your participants. It could be about communicating with partners. So it could be, if it's a health and wellbeing project, you want to reach out to local clinical commissioning groups, or other third sector organisations, so voluntary organisations. It's the same process if you're thinking about creating a funding application, again, because it's all about storytelling. And then also what I would describe as, in old language, gatekeepers, but actually I think the word that those young people use these days are influencers. So the people who may not be your direct line of communication, but they may be the people who will be the stepping stone to those people. And they are really important to remember those people when you're describing your who. And then we'll have a look at how, and how I think is directly related, oh, that wasn't meant to happen. How is directly related to who. It's about adapting your language, your tone, to the people that you're speaking to. Where are these people in the world? That's also really important, because that will allow us to work out how we're going to communicate with them, i.e. when is the best time to communicate with them, and what platforms, methods we'll use. And then I'll also just quickly take you through a really, really quick time plan, budgeting, and how to monitor and evaluate your success. Because I think if you do all of that work and you don't timeline it, and you don't work out your resources that you need, whether they're cash resources or human resources, and then you don't look and measure your success, it won't work, in short. So the who, and I've been very deliberate here, and I apologise. I realise that my scribbling on the right hand of the screen may not be very accessible, and so I apologise. And I can type them into beautiful spider diagram for the PowerPoint if people are having problem looking at it. But I wanted you to see that there is, as I said earlier, it doesn't have to be some great big, beautiful, glossy thing, this plan. This is your plan, remember? And I'm trying to remember who I spoke to about this the other day, but it was the DMU students, so Chloe will remember this conversation. And I talked about this, and actually I shared some of these slides with the DMU students, so Chloe's seen these before. But we talked about the concept of what we referred to in the bad old days of those of us that smoked, the back of the fag packet marketing plan, or the back of the fag packet budget. Or some people might say the back of the envelope. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to the British Library. I sometimes nip in there when we've got meetings in London. And I can't remember which song it is, but it's one of the really famous Beatles songs. It might be Yesterday, where Paul McCartney wrote the lyrics on the back of an envelope. And it's there in a case. So it's kind of like perhaps one of the most important pieces of musical writing in our lifetime was written on the back of an envelope. And all the great things are, I think that's what I'm trying to say. So your marketing plan, your communications plan can also be written on the back of an envelope. I'd encourage you to put it onto something that's a bit more, that you may not want to accidentally put in the recycling bin. But here we go. This is my attempt to start to identify who my audience is. And before I start to sort of drill down into the specifics of I'm just going to skip back actually, because I didn't describe. So my dance project, for this demonstration purposes, is I'm going to do a dance project with new parents who may be suffering with postnatal depression. So they're my target audience for my project. But before I get there, I need to explore and delve into my network, so see what I've got in my resources. So it may not be, it might be that you sit there and think, I just don't know anybody. How am I going to connect with these people? How am I going to connect with people who want to fund this? How am I going to connect with third sector organisations that might be interested in this? And I do believe that it's really important to work on yourself first. You are a huge resource, and you need to rinse yourself of all of your networks and all of your contacts at the very first thing to do. And it could be a professional network, or it could be a personal contact. And I'm pretty sure that all of us at some point in our working lives have tapped into some personal connections. I know that at People Dancing, when we were writing our application to Big Lottery for the Dance for Parkinson's work, that my personal connection to my dad having Parkinson's and the local support groups and the Parkinson's nurse, the whole network that was sitting around my family, was a really good way for us to get into a Leicestershire connection, where we want to develop that network. So this is what I would encourage you to do, and this could be a way of starting to understand who your audiences are, whether, as I said, whether it's participants in the project, stakeholders, so other people that really want to see this work happen, partners who might want to engage in the project with you, either in delivery or in reaching the target audience, whether it's a funder or, as I said, a gatekeeper or an influencer. And then again, no apologies, this is the back of a piece of scrap paper. So I'm doing my bit for the environment as well. And this is me just drilling down now and starting to map out where I think these people and who they might be. So if I'm going to start developing a workshop that's specifically around a particular demographic, new parents, a particular health condition, so a mental health and well-being agenda, I'm starting to look at specifically different types of influencers and audiences. So there's plenty of gateways in to either reaching our participants or reaching some stakeholders who might want to see this happen and might be able to unlock some resources for you. And again, these people who are key influencers perhaps in a person's life. And again, you know, there will be different situations where, again, when we were talking earlier about an older demographic that may not be engaging in certain mediums like social media, for example, just because at the time, my mum certainly wasn't engaged in Facebook, and it was a you know, rue the day I ever suggested it. She got a Facebook page, and now she just spies on me the whole time. But back in the day, I would, as a key member of the family and influencer, and I had a very strong position in my family in terms of influencing my mum and dad's decisions around stuff, that I could, through my personal networks, professional and personal, be able to suggest that my parents might like to engage in a choir or a dance activity. And then I'm just developing now my little mapping. So I'm thinking about these people, and I'm now thinking about the particular channels that I'm going to explore. So using this example again, new parents, a health condition, I'm thinking of the different types of communication channels. So here we're seeing, word of mouth, so direct communication with the participants. And again, we talked about the where we're going to communicate with people. So you know, it could be that in my research I've done, I can see that, you know, one of the good ways of connecting with new parents of very young children would be through their siblings and their other children. So it might be that I can communicate through a school or a nursery. If it's a very local project, there to look at exploring in the different sort of printed communications, so whether there's a parish newsletter. But again, making sure that I really have identified the different options. And I think at this stage, the planning stage, is where you need to just put everything down. And then you might decide, actually, some of that's not worth doing. I'm just going to stick to one type of communication. And again, I can't tell you which one is right, because it entirely depends on the audience, the participant, the person that you're working with, and the intention of your work. And then moving that on, I've just expanded it slightly. So I think what I'm trying to say here is some of this is direct marketing. So this could be like an article, an advert in the newsletter. It could be a direct communication with some health professionals. But also when we started looking at this afternoon, we talked about sort of marketing versus communication. So it could be that this is a new piece of work for you, this is a new area of work, or it's a new area of work for your locality, or the organisation that you're working for, if you're working for as part of a bigger team. And some of this stuff could be about the broader communications. So articles and blogs, so writing about your work, sharing your thoughts and ideas about the kind of work that you're doing. So for those of you that follow our early years network, you'll see that Liz Clark, who's one of our associate artists who leads the early years network on our behalf, Liz does lots of stuff around writing about the work, so it's not always just related to the projects she does or the classes that she teaches. And again, you might want to consider whether it's worth doing any paid listings. So, when? Don't discount the when, as I said before. It's really important to try to understand. So do your research. If you've posted something and you think, oh, that went really, really, really well, try and find out why it went well. When is it good to place information in front of people? We've all agreed that it's a really busy world right now. There's lots of people have talked about kind of like the traffic, lots of people doing lots of different things. So making sure that you're putting your communication out into the world that's not at the same time as everybody else. I mean, that's pretty difficult because there's only so many hours in the day. But a combination of the right time and the right thing to the right audience can be exactly, can do what you want it to do. So as I said before, People Dancing, we treat, in the good times, I mean, at the moment, some of our strategy's gone off the boil slightly because we've got a very small number of members, short-staffed at the moment. So normally, May, who looks after our posting on all our social media, she wouldn't post on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at the same time of day. I'm doing it at the moment, and I do it when I can, because at the moment we are, we've furloughed 4 members of the team, and so we're all doing lots of work in the background that we wouldn't normally be doing. So in an ideal world, we would normally only post on Facebook at those optimum times of day, which are for us are usually around lunchtime or early evening, and we find the majority of people engage with us on these. And so they're doing it over lunch, or they're doing it post-tea. They might be sitting down on the couch, watching a bit of the news and having a scroll through their phones at the same time. And again, with Twitter, it's a kind of lunchtime thing, because that's, we, as I said before, we're doing kind of business to business stuff, so people tend to be sat at their desks. And then Instagram, we would post later in the day to sort of meet the timing of a slightly younger demographic. So have a look, and if you've got social media accounts, have a look and see when people are responding to you currently. And if you haven't and you're not, just have a look and see if you can the best times for, you can usually see without looking into people's insights in the background, the kind of response people are getting for posts, the kind of like the level of engagement, the amount of people that are liking something or sharing something. And then the rest of the plan. So once you've decided the what, the how, the where, the when, make sure that you've got a realistic time scale, she says, looking at her watch, making sure I'm not running out of time. Make sure you've got enough time to do what you need to do before you need it to happen. So if it's not direct marketing, but a communications message, and you want to measure its effectiveness, you might need to ask yourself some questions in order to impose a time frame. So quite clearly, if you're launching an event or launching an activity on a particular date, you're working towards that timeline. But if you haven't, if you're just kind of like trying to drive up more interest in you and what you're doing, you may need to impose a deadline. So for example, I've said here, did my blog drive up visits to my website? Should I have one? And so I might want to say, well, actually, I'm going to post my blog on Friday the 29th of May, and I'm going to look and see by the second week of June how many people visited my website as a result of that blog. And that's where you need Google Analytics, and that's where you need a completely different organisation, and I will signpost you to those them at the end. Budgeting. I think it's really crucial that whether the marketing and communications work that you do is paid or unpaid, remember your effort and your time is still a cost to you. So make sure it's worth it. If you've got to take 3 to 4 hours out of your working week to create some copy, to upload it onto your social media accounts, or sit and work out the text or the images for a flyer, for a piece of work, remember that your time costs you money. It's time you would be doing something else. So make sure it's worth it. And the only way that you can make sure it's worth it is by monitoring and evaluating what you've done. So some of this stuff has to be a bit speculative. So this is why I'm suggesting you do as much research as you possibly can before you commit either your own time or your limited financial resources to do it. So you need to kind of create a way of measuring whether your marketing communications activity is effective. And as I said, this is the, if you're using social media accounts, you can use the insights at the back, but also don't forget to ask people, did you see my post? What did you think? An evaluation. So before you embark on doing anything else in the future, reflect on what you've done and was it worth it? So if a small piece of paid advertising really paid off, now, and some people talked about, again, the professional marketing resources that sit around some franchised opportunities. You know, again, one piece of communication and marketing to advertise my fan. So this is my new product and it's my fan. Marvellous thing. Keeps you very cool when it's warm. I've got one product, but I'm going to give it to all of you to sell on my behalf, which is the franchise model. I've only got to come up with one marketing strategy for my fan. So that's why it's those are effective, because you know they would have spent resources and time making sure that that marketing plan for this fan is really, really good. Whereas there's only one of you and there's only one of your work. And so you kind of having to make a different version of your marketing every time you create something different, a new product, or you're looking to engage with a new audience. And that quote at the end, I think, is me just saying it's the same principle whether you're talking about direct marketing for a class, etc., or you're trying to raise your profile with a new funder or engage with a new partner. So if I was going to, in developing my new project for new parents with postnatal depression, and I wanted to engage with a number of local partners, I've still got to come up with a communication that's going to be impactful and talk to them in the language that they need to hear it in. And let's just slip back a slide or two. I think I'd have got the hang of this by now. And so how to speak to people. And I think, again, this is just you sitting down and working out the benefits of your projects or your work for each of these people. So in the case of my example there, my project, you know, quite clearly participating in physical activity, in something creative, something away from the home, etc., for a participant has benefits. So I'm going to be talking in a way that is meaningful to somebody about the circumstances that they are personally in. If I'm talking to a partner or a funder, so a stakeholder who I want to engage in the work with me, I'm going to be talking about what the benefits will be beyond the individual participants. So is this about, so say I'm talking to kind of a health audience, you know, some of the language we might use might use data and statistics and evidence around, you know, the impact of creativity and physical activity on mental health disorders, for example. So it's a different kind of language. And Rosie, who's our communications manager at People Dancing, often refers to the McDonald's method of communication, which is surprising because I don't think she ever eats McDonald's. But for one product, they will have, apparently, 7 different types of communication. So it's a bit like my fan. I'm going to sell my one product, but for each different type of audience that they've identified, they have a different way of communicating the message. And obviously that's can also come down to the what as well. In the same way we talked about the different channels of communicating with people, where they receive their information, the kind of language we use, the kind of images we use. Everybody receives their information differently, depending on those. So again, this is just the plan, and I really did want to keep it this simple. There is this is literally how I would start. If People Dancing were launching a new initiative or a new project or a new membership offer, from a communications planning perspective, I would sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and I would do this. There's no fancy spreadsheet, there's no fancy app. There probably is, but I'm not interested in them. This is how I work. I'm a visual, kinesthetic person. So hopefully this will appeal to you too. So in just putting the plan into some kind of order, I'm working out over here, this is my project, so this is my who, so I'm looking to attract parents, new parents to my group. This is where I'm going to find them. So I may find them through their health visitor. I may find the health visitor through an industry publication that's got nothing to do with dance and everything to do with mental health and well-being. Or there might be a Facebook group that already exists that I might be able to find out how I could communicate through that. And then I'd work out what the what is going to be. So it might be that I could write something about dance and mental health that might be interesting for my local paper. I could blog about it, which could get published in a publication. Or I might decide that I'm going to list or advertise something on Facebook, and then a quick timeline, and then I'd work out the costs and whether there's any costs associated with any of these things. So there's no money, but it's my time, and some of this is about paid promotion. Where are we at? We're at 3:30. So, and then just to finish off with my example, how am I going to know that my communications campaign around my new project has been successful? So I start my group and I will ask people where they heard about it. It's basic, but it's really important. Where did you hear about this? Oh, I read about it in the local paper. Or my grandma gave me the clipping from local paper. Or, you know, somebody saw something on Facebook and told me about it. So it's really important that we capture the data. And again, it doesn't have to be something really sophisticated. It can just be something really, really basic. The most important thing is you've captured it, and the most important thing is you reflect upon it. And again, if things are a little bit more sophisticated and you've produced a blog, you could potentially track the date of publication of your blog against those people who might suddenly now be looking at your website or following you on social media. So I can see on a daily basis, when I look into the insights of People Dancing's social media accounts, I can start to track when we post something to the number of followers, new followers that we're getting, for example, on Instagram. And then very lastly, before we hook into some more specific questions, and just to go back over some of your initial issues that you raised, I just want to remind you, first of all, we have a free online learning program. For those of you that haven't delved in and had a look at it yet, it's the Developing Income one. It's got a bigger title, but I can't remember quite the full title right now. And there is a whole section in there which talks you through creating the right language. So I know some of you talked about how to describe yourself to people and what you do. So there's a whole section in there that talks you through kind of creating vision, mission and value statements, which sound a bit ominous, but actually it's a really useful exercise to do. If you're going to write a funding application, you will have to do it anyway. But even if you're not, if you're about to go and meet a new potential partner or a new influencer gatekeeper in the local community about something you want to develop, being able to explain to people who you are and what you do and the impact you have for them is really just as crucial, whether, as I said, whether it's a funding application or you're having a cup of tea with someone talking about your work. So that part of the, I think it's in part B of the online learning program, will take you through some of that process. And that's, again, it's pretty simple stuff. It's about kind of finding the right words to describe what you do and tweaking it to the right audience. So things to help you do this. And I've realised that I've talked a lot about digital platforms particularly, and I know that for many of you working with older people, they may not be engaging in social media platforms. But just remember, they may not be, but key influences in their lives might be. And actually, as long as they get the information, it kind of, I say it doesn't matter. In a way, you've reached your conclusion, you've got what you want, you've got people there. So it's really important that you don't discount using digital technology communications, because there's still a way to reach your audience. So the two that I would thoroughly recommend to you is the Space and the Digital Culture Network. And I've engaged with training and development with both of those. And I did not come to my role at People Dancing as a communications expert, and I still don't think I am. I just know a bit more than other people and know how to use it in the way that I need to know how to use it. These are both free. There's loads of webinars, YouTube videos. I mean, I use them all the time. I mean, I find Google Analytics really difficult, but actually, once you can get your brain around it, it's really, really useful. If I can find out that actually the post I did 3 days ago about this person led me to an increase of 50% of traffic to our website in the last month. So more, you know, we've almost doubled the amount of people going to look at our website over the last month. That's really crucial information to our organisation, because one, it tells us we're doing something right and we're being useful. But, you know, we are an Arts Council funded organisation, and we have to prove our worth. And we also have to prove to funders that we have the means to communicate with people in an effective way. So if you give me some money to develop a toolkit, how do you know that the thing that I've produced is going to reach as many people as possible? Well, I know that because I can evidence it by fishing around in the background of our analytics and working out that a piece of communication from us means more people go to our website and look at the things that we're producing to support them. So definitely have a look at the space, definitely have a look at the Digital Culture Network. They have these tech champions there, are brilliant. I've been to training with them, and they're geeks. They're the right kind of geeks. They don't kind of throw data speak at you, and they're very again, their presentations are very visual, so they're very helpful, very, very helpful. And then the last thing, very quickly, is a new piece of work that we've developed with some fundraising, some funding from Arts Fundraising and Philanthropy. It will be available in the next couple of weeks. It is specifically for you. We applied for the funding because we believe that there isn't currently a toolkit that exists to enable independent practitioners to do some of the storytelling. So the toolkit is a set of resources to help artists demonstrate the value and impact of participatory arts and develop partnerships for funding work. So if you're unable to apply for some trusts and foundations for funding because you're an independent practitioner, you don't have an organisation and structure behind you, it's almost impossible. But sometimes you can hook someone else along with you who's interested in what you're doing. So first of all, you've got to get to those people. So a storytelling toolkit to help you to get to those people, and then a toolkit that will help you say the right things to the funder. So what we've done is we've pulled together a number of case studies across the whole kind of participatory arts perspective. It'll have evidence, so it'll have data, photographs, lots of resources, so that you could start to build a picture of your own work using other evidence and resources, because that's sometimes very hard to get hold of. And that's it. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. I've talked for lots and lots and lots, and I'm very hot, and I expect you are as well. I'm going to have a quick look and see if there's anything in the chat, and then I'm going to see. Yes, so Karen has written to everybody that she's done some research when it's a good time to post. Absolutely. I think you're right. Now that's changed at the moment, I have to say. I said this to my daughter yesterday. I went, our Instagram's just gone off the scale, and the amount of new followers we've got. We must be doing something right. And she just brought me straight back down to ground, and just said, yeah, that's because no one's got anything to do, Mum. They're all on their social media accounts because they're all bored. So, hey, whatever means, they're engaging with us. So that's good. Are there any questions right now that anybody has any sort of burning, I want to ask that question? Ruth hasn't answered it. If you want to raise your hand. No. Golly gosh, everyone's hot and tired. Oh, Heidi's raising, are you raising a real hand or a virtual hand? No, you're just waving at me. That's okay. So just going back over your questions then. I'm hoping that some of the presentation has addressed these issues. So Joe's group, for example, you talked about how do you reach people locally? That kind of targeted communication, breaking through the traffic. How many people are out there all trying to do the same thing in the same way? I hope that the presentation has kind of encouraged you that the key to doing some of that is your research, is having the right, how to get the message to the right people at the right time is really about research. As I said, there is no magic formula. I can't say to you, if you want to talk about fans, it's 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon because that's when everyone's interested in fans. You are going to have to do some research because your offer to whoever is going to be very specific, geographically, demographically, and all of the above. I do believe that low tech communication is going to have its moment again. I think paper communications at the right time to the right audience is really crucial. I think anything that you can stick on a fridge with a magnet is old school, but it's new school again. It's the emperor's old clothes, the emperor's new clothes even. You're right, we're swimming in digital channels, and that might be where some of your audience get their information from, but it might not be the right channel. It might be better potentially when the world is up and running again, that your placing of a particular piece of printed communication in the post office window or the parish newsletter or the parish notice board at the entrance to a park is still more effective to reach the audience that you want to reach. It might still be more effective to put a flyer in a program. It might, but again, you'll only know whether that's going to be effective if you think it through. If you decide, well, actually, what I'm advertising is a ballet class for older, I'm going to say older, not people in there, older people. And actually, I'm teaching it locally, and I'm teaching it out of the village hall in Countersthorpe. And actually might be more appropriate for you to put an advert in the local dance school's program. That venue will have 400 bums on seats 5 nights that week, and you're like, well, actually that's going to reach all of these people, and it's a local thing, and you're going to have aunties and uncles and grandmas and grandpas, etc., going to the activity. And so it might be better to spend a little bit of money to be very direct in your communication rather than have some fancy advert in a kind of local newspaper. Developing your unique selling point. Again, I'm going to take you back to the online learning program, because the exercise that we take you through in terms of developing your vision, mission and value statements will also help you to articulate what it is that you do that isn't Joe Wicks. And again, I think carefully. And the other thing that we do on the online learning program is we talk you through the use of images and photographs to accompany your work. I think that's crucial. I don't know about you, but I might be put off taking part in a class where everybody looks like they've just been downloaded from an episode of the Kardashians, maybe. Or they've bought a stock photo that says that when they search for it, they look for dance class, and it's got some very svelte, beautiful looking people without hair out of place in some fancy gym wear, stood in a certain position. And that might not speak to me, because I think, well, I don't look like that. And I'll put off immediately from even wanting to go anywhere near that class, because I don't think I look like that. And I think that's the same message when you're trying to engage partners as well. If you're using images to try and engage with them, photographs of the people that your work is going to benefit, not any kind of like fancy performance photographs of people dancing, if that isn't what your work is about. Just working through this list. I think I'm hoping that we've covered most of these things. So I'm just going to quickly check that there aren't any other questions. We've got some fantastic suggestions in the chat from Jo. Jo's talking about her developing her local networks. Next door platform, Katie, was that what we spoke on the other day as different to Zoom?
Shall I say it's a platform, and it's just local to where you live, and it's mostly people are putting up that they've got something they want to give away, or and at the moment there's a lot of people offering to pick up people's shopping and things. But it's also, when we started our Parkinson's class in Exeter, we put little notes up there just to reach the local people in Exeter, in case they're interested. I haven't since I got to Nottingham tried that. Well, I haven't started anything yet, but it could be a way of reaching local, rather than, because you can only reach it, you put your postcode in and it will only let you speak to people in your neighborhood. So
yeah, I think that's a really good example of exploring the potential of a new form of communication that's very targeted and focused on a particular geographic area. What else we got? Jo's very good. Jo's got lots of. So I think kind of what Jo is saying is thinking more broadly about where you might reach the people. Is that right, Jo? They might not all be in one place, but they might be associated with the thing.
No, it's more, I've really used my neighbourhood plan.
Okay.
So local areas will write if you type up your town or wherever you live and put neighbourhood plan into it, often a group of people have come together and they are really good stakeholders and gatekeepers. So they've made a decision, the next 3 years we want this and this to be developed. Obviously that was perhaps before COVID, but some of those things in there are going to be devised by people who are connected to the community. So in terms of finding the who, I've found that really useful. I've got so many lists of people who I can then contact from that. And also here we've had a lot of the associations, like we've got an Emsworth Alliance, those type of things. And the business associations have really helped me over the last few years. So, a lot of towns and places want it to be a nice place to live, and they want to support the well-being of people living there. So if you're offering something that supports that, like they've directly advertised my work for me and stuff. So I just thought that was
And I think that's fantastic contribution, Jo, because that just reinforces the kind of slide I used at the beginning of that kind of identifying of networks, and you can drag that piece of paper out and add to it every time you can unlock. I mean, I learnt most about developing networks when I worked with the Parent-Teacher Association at my kids' primary school. I mean, crikey, is a bunch of kind of local people who are trying to fundraise for the school fair. Oh, never seen a bunch of people, the most diverse, bonkers list of raffle prizes I've ever seen. Because everyone was using their connections. Oh, I know a bloke that works at the garden centre, and we got fish tank and some fish, and we had toolkits and some real random stuff. But the purpose of that was to get to make money for the school, and the best way to do that for us was to have a fantastic range of prizes. So I go back to what I said at the beginning. There's a kind of like, don't over mystify this thing. Getting out your list of contacts, getting out your list of networks, expanding and developing it, being very targeted and specific about which ones you want to use right now. And as I said, making your plan really, really work for you, and not to worry if you have to change it and you don't stick to it, because it's a developmental process and you're learning all of the time, and you might find actually that was a complete and utter waste of time, or that was really good, so I'm actually going to ditch that other thing, that other priority, and focus all of my energy on this because this seems to be working. All I would say to you is, note to self, why did it work? Because that's gold, absolute gold. If you can find out the magic formula, why people came, because it won't just be your class, because you undoubtedly are fantastic. Your offer is undoubtedly fantastic. And anyone that turns up and does your class or engages in your work or your program or joins you as a partner on an initiative is really, really lucky, because you're really good at what you do. But if nobody knows about it, it doesn't matter how good it is. And actually the key to getting people to it is the way you communicate it to the world. It can be the best opportunity in the world. And if you don't communicate effectively, no one's going to know about it. And actually some utter rubbish in the world right now is out there because they're part of much bigger organisations that have machines behind them, as we've said. And I'm not saying that all franchises are rubbish, because they're not. But we are up against bigger machines who have sophisticated plans and sophisticated marketing systems behind them. But actually, they aren't that sophisticated. They've just got the machine running, and it's only you peddling the machine. So, keep it simple, keep it sweet, do your research, make it work for you. And try. The only way I can kind of guarantee that you will grow in confidence and skills is to try and do something success that where there is a measure of success for you. And you'll only know if you've been successful if you kind of are a bit strict and formulaic and developmental about it. Because I suspect that all of you have the skills that you need to do what you need to do. It's just applying a bit of discipline to it and some thinking, doing the thinking, doing the planning. Are there any last questions? We've got a few minutes. If we haven't all melted, I don't know about, because John's taken his cardigan off. So that's an indication of how warm we've all got the last couple of hours. Sorry, John, to pick on you. I don't think we've got any raised hands. So I keep your eyes peeled on our website. We'll put something up. It'll probably go in the next members newsletter anyway. So the toolkit should be available in the next couple of weeks. I should say the other thing that's in it that's really, really bloody useful is we've engaged a digital communication specialist to tell us how to use social media platforms. So what kind of copy works, how long it should be, and what kind of image. So all of these mystical things are going to be in one place in a really helpful toolkit for you. So some of that thinking we've kind of helped to do some of that, because I think once you've got it, it's a no-brainer. So I'm just going to say thank you. Good luck with your communications and your fundraising. As members of People Dancing, the one-to-one support surgeries are still available to you. If you want to spend a bit more time with me working on stuff, that's absolutely fine. I would suggest you just email me directly now. We do have a Google form, and there is an official way to go through info at. But I think you probably get what you need from me quicker if you just email me. So it's ruth@communitydance.org.uk. And lovely to see you all. Take care, stay safe.